Some places where generations will gravitate to are places where it's cheaper or free, people who want to help for ideological reasons, and people who want to get some coins without the inconvenience of doing a transaction to buy them. Satoshi Nakamoto. Welcome back to What is Your Bitcoin Story podcast, where we dive into the fascinating tales of pioneers and visionaries in the world of Bitcoin. I'm your host, Gigi, and today we have a very inspiring guest joining us, Scott Sibley. Scott is the founder of Shamory and an advocate for bringing Bitcoin education to our little ones. Get ready to learn about his incredible journey as we explore the world of Bitcoin, innovation, and the empowering of the next generations with financial literacy. Tune in to hear Scott's unique perspective and insights on the future of Bitcoin. So let's jump right into it. Scott, welcome to the show.
Thanks for having me, Gigi. Excited to be here.
It's an absolute pleasure. And as I told you right before we started recording, I'm really excited for this episode because I'm actually a father of two young daughters. And as I told you, I guess this is one of the most important topics about educating our future generations, as they're the ones who will be inheriting all of the sats and essentially, hopefully, if everything goes right, living in a Bitcoin standard world. So, but before we go into your day-to-day kind of activities, Scott, why don't you take us back to your beginning of your journey down the rabbit hole?
No, happy to do so. And it's nice that we both get to be girl dads of two. So,
oh, nice.
Common as well. So it's always something fun going on that side of things.
It is indeed.
Yeah. So for my story, my story starts kind of back in 2017, 2018, kind of at the beginning of it starts with kind of that typical story of that time where you get attracted by number go up, you fall down the pigeonhole of shitcoins for a little bit of time. And that's really what brought you in. But if I really think about it deeper, the first time I ever heard about Bitcoin, I don't know the year. I want to say it was probably 2013, 2014, if I had to guess. But I remember I was at my mom's house and the local news was on the TV, probably in the background or something. And I remember there was a story about the first Bitcoin ATM being installed here in San Diego. And
wow.
For whatever, I didn't act on that in any way back then, obviously, or else we'd be sitting in a different place. But or who knows, it could be all gone anyways. You never know what would happen. But for whatever reason, hearing that news story, if I fast forward to 2017, 2018, it always stuck in the back of my head for whatever reason. So you can almost say, going into that next interest in it was kind of my second touching point of Bitcoin, and that's really when it took hold. Lucky in my case, you hear a lot of stories where it can take people, maybe forever to get out of the altcoin or shitcoin side of things. It really only took me a few months to be able to realize the difference between everything that was going on.
You're a fast learner, Scott.
Maybe it was because of that news story sticking in the back of my head. Who knows?
Maybe.
But yeah, I want to say it was probably, March, April 2018 when really dove down the Bitcoin rabbit hole in earnest, read the white paper, read, some of those early books. Going back then, it sounds crazy to the people coming to the space now. There weren't a lot of podcasts out there. So you find the handful that you could start listening to, start learning from them. And, for our purposes on the Shamory side of things, my wife and I had been recently married a few years prior. And in that same time period, we were starting our family for the first time. And so she had just recently gotten pregnant. And so I think that's probably what primed both of us to be able to say, okay, we're interested in Bitcoin, we're starting to invest in it, learn more about it. But one day we'll want to be able to teach our kids about financial literacy and Bitcoin and everything on that side of things. And so that's really where the idea of Shamory came about and kind of where everything grew from there. And so we're happy to keep talking about that. But as far as my story goes, that's kind of the beginning of it.
So I guess with your professional background, do you come from the education space, or how did you come to incept in Shamory? Or
yeah, so both of us kind of come from the education space, not in the sense that either of us have ever been teachers directly, but during that time period, and for about 15 years, I worked for a local education technology company,
Mm.
doing a myriad of things, anything from sales to marketing to product development, roadmap planning. So I had a knowledge of kind of the traditional education space from that, along with the fact that many of my relatives are teachers, my mom,
Mm.
aunts, uncles, cousins. So growing up around education kind of primed that side of things. And Mallory, my wife, has a similar background. Her mom works in the education space. So we both kind of had that education
Running through
thinking.
your veins.
Yeah, exactly. And so that made us kind of probably think ahead to the future for our kids, and down that rabbit hole.
Nice. Well, I would like to debunk now to some listeners who are thinking, "What is Shamory?" I've done my research through the website, but I'll let you unravel where does the coin join of the two words come from?
Yes, it's so for those that don't know, so Shamory was our first product, was our
Okay.
card game, and so the genesis of that name is SHA-256 is the algorithm that's used in Bitcoin mining. Our game itself teaches about Bitcoin mining in a fun, low stakes way, good for kind of 4-year-olds on up through adults, and so that's where the SHA comes from, and the gameplay is very similar to the game of memory, which I'm sure all of us have played at some time in our life, where you're flipping over cards, trying to
Yeah.
create matches, remember where they are. And so when we kick things off, that's kind of the coin join, like you say, the merger of the two things, where we took the SHA from SHA-256 and the Mori from memory, and Shamri is what it came about, and it's worked well.
Amazing. And what year was that? Was that 2020? When did you
Yeah,
guys launch?
probably started thinking about it late in 2018, really creating it in 2019, and launched officially in April of 2020.
Okay. Wow. What a timing to launch, right? When everybody suddenly was strapped at home and
Yes. Yeah,
and
it did
decided to
cause
sit at home.
it did cause some problems as far as manufacturing and whatnot. So, but we made it to the other side.
So I guess you started off with the card game, but then ever since there's been a lot of other things, such as some book series that came out, stories of finding Satoshi and the Goodnight books. Actually, funny, Scott, just a couple of months ago, my eldest is 4 years old and my youngest is 2 years old, and it's all about daddy reading them the books before bedtime. And
Yeah,
my 4 year old Maya, she told me a couple of months ago, she goes, "Dad, I really want you to read me a book about Bitcoin." And then that's how I actually stumbled upon you, Scott, with Shamory. And I was like, "Oh, we need to get Scott on." But then definitely following that, we'll definitely get some books, because it's amazing. Like that time when you have when they're so young and you get to read them stories before bed. I think it's that magical time of when it really sticks in, because after you hear a story, you don't just instantly fall asleep. You're still like contemplating and thinking about it. So it's really nice how you've kind of evolved it into other factors.
yeah, no, totally, and we're right there with you. I don't know if you've crossed the cat. Our oldest is 5,
Mm.
and our youngest is 9 months, and so the 5-year-old avid reader, always wanting to read books, similar story. We do the bedtime reading before going to sleep, and it's definitely evolved into much longer books, where you have to, it used to be, we would tell you could read 5 books, and that would,
Mm.
when you're reading a book like Goodnight Bitcoin, or those ones, they're quick, easy.
Yeah.
You can get through 5 of them. But as you might have come across, as your oldest has gotten older, those books are getting longer. There's chapters, and so, it's evolved from like 5 books to, okay, we got 5 chapters we can get through in this book about fairies and unicorns, or whatever whatever is the topic of the day. But yet, from our side of things, yeah, we evolved from the game, and then after about a year, um, actually, it was probably about exactly a year, we launched the first book, Goodnight Bitcoin.
Mm.
We started creating it about 6 months after the game, and honestly, as with most of our products, we're really just creating things that we know our daughters would like. Um, they're our test bed,
You've got
and
the
so
perfect customer sitting at home.
exactly. And so at that time, we had read Goodnight Moon, Goodnight Baseball, Goodnight Gorilla, the whole gamut. There wasn't a Goodnight Bitcoin out there yet, so we figured, let's make it ourselves.
Nice.
And going back to the game, for those that have played it, know this, but for those that don't, everything we've created with Shamra has done via these Bitcoin monster characters. And so there's 12 or 14 of them. And so the purpose for that was one, for the gameplay, but also knowing that these characters are something that in our minds, going back 6 years now, which is crazy to say, are things that we wanted to see live, in other products, both within Shamory and outside of that. And so being able to leverage those characters in our books, in our plush toys, we have baby teether, pins, clothes. We want them to be kind of the recognizable figure for kids in Bitcoin, to be able to have them bring comfort around the concept of Bitcoin. It doesn't have to be a scary thing. These kids are going to grow up with it being second nature no matter what. But if their first touch point is knowing that, I saw Satoshi on my shirt here, I know that character from playing the game or reading the books or a plush toy I went to sleep with at night. That's one of the biggest hurdles that you can get across, just that comfort. And so that was one of the purposes behind the characters that we created throughout everything.
No, it's amazing, and I totally agree with you. It's you need to relate them to some kind of character, because if you're just putting out these terms and these terminologies, it doesn't really stick. But all young kids, they love a little nice plushy monster, so it's like a perfect match to grasp their memory and get them going.
Yeah.
But I guess I also saw you've done some philanthropy stuff, right, in Africa with helping with education. Maybe we can touch upon that, because I think that's a super important thing, and it's very nice that you're doing that, because Africa as a continent has been deprived for so many centuries, and now I truly believe we had a few guests that we spoke about specifically on Africa, how Bitcoin can really liberate these people and give them hope. And in your case, how you're actually going back to the young ones and kids ones. Can you just run me through how did that come around, and what was that experience like?
Yeah, so that project that you're talking about is our Waterwell project. And so we kicked that off right before Bitcoin 2023, so about a year and a half ago now, say May or June of 2023, and that was in partnership with the Built with Bitcoin Foundation. And so we had worked with them for a while in a number of smaller ways, but we want to kind of kick that up to the next level. And so one of the questions that Mallory and I had always gotten from people was, we love your characters. When are you going to make a plush toy? And so it was always in the back of our head, but at the same time, we didn't want to just make another plush toy to put it out there. So that's where the idea came. Okay, let's partner with Built with Bitcoin, and let's make this plush toy be Africa themed in some way, and then donate a percentage of the gross sales, on 21% of the gross sales of the
Nice
plush
number.
toy. Exactly. We figured it would catch on. 21% went directly to the foundation, with the goal of raising $5,000, which would fund the entirety of building a Waterwell in a rural town in South Africa. Excuse me, in Africa. And so we kicked that off. It took probably about 6 or 8 months, but we were able to fund the project.
Nice.
The well is in a community in Rwanda. I believe there's about it got completed earlier this year, the building of it. I believe there's about 1,200 community members in that village prior to having the well there. So it's a 50,000 gallon well. And prior to having that access within their village, they'd have to travel 4 hours
Oh, wow.
round trip to be able to get water, fresh water every day. Whereas now they have access to it, right in that village, which obviously can, changes people's lives, to say the least. And so, yeah, that's definitely the most heartwarming project that we've been able to complete to date, and something we're really proud of. Hope to one day be able to make the trek down there and see it in person.
No, it's incredible. Like I got goosebumps. I mean, it's these type of things that are priceless, right? The feeling that you get from helping these people that really have nothing, and as you said, Scott, the fact that you need to travel for 4 hours to get fresh water is just something that people can't imagine in quote unquote first world countries, where you can just go open a tap or go nip down to the shop and get a bottle of water. And then it all goes back to thank you, Satoshi, for bringing this technology, where without Satoshi, there'd be no Shamory, there'd be no well in Rwanda. And it's these kind of projects which really shines on the hope of how Bitcoin is making the world a better place, opposed to, well, maybe not now anymore, but if we retract 6 months ago, it was all media was kind of, booting down Bitcoin, with mining, especially how we're using and burning the planet with all this, mining energy being used up, which they didn't even understand that the energy is not being used up, it's being converted into sats. But that's a whole different topic. But yeah, it's incredible, how these small projects can help people on the other side of the world. And I guess that was your first one, but I'm sure you will be doing other similar things, right, going forward from that
hopefully,
experience.
definitely. We definitely don't want to stop here, and helping other communities or kids, or who knows what it is next. Nothing exactly planned, but for sure something that we're passionate about. We did a small thing when we were at the Bitcoin conference in July in Nashville, where we were able to, we had at our booth, we had a thing set up where if people wanted to donate books or games to a local nonprofit, it was called Book It Nashville. And this nonprofit takes books and then distributes them in the Nashville community to kids or schools or whatever it may be. And so at our booth in Nashville, people were able to make a donation towards us donating books and games to that nonprofit. So we were able to do that there, which worked out well. Obviously, much smaller scale, but every little bit helps.
Every little help.
Yep, exactly.
Nice. So I want to now touch upon the topic of just general education. So not through gameplay or books, but like traditional education. In your eyes, Scott, how and when do you think like the general education system will accept Bitcoin and will bring it into, the classrooms of our kids? Or do you think this is something that is like decades away, that it's not going to happen anytime soon?
Yeah, I don't know if it's decades away, but unfortunately, I think it's probably a ways away, just from working in the space for so many years.
Takes a long time.
At least here in the States, I'll speak for that. Schools in general are the last to change or innovate as a whole. You might find those one-offs who are adapting and innovating and being forward thinking. And there's obviously some amazing teachers out there that are individual in that aspect that are able to do that. So there, you will have those pockets. And we know, some of them out there today already. But on a whole, I think we're probably a ways away. You might have more luck. So we homeschool our daughter, and we'll do our second one as well when she gets of age. But in those sorts of homeschool type communities, since there's more flexibility, people in that realm, by and large, might be more prone to already be thinking about Bitcoin in a certain way. So there is that side of things that I think might bubble up faster. But in a traditional sense, it's horrible to say, but I mean, they're not good at teaching traditional financial education.
That's true.
So being able to think that they're going to be able to adapt to a whole new form of thing of education is probably a lot to ask. I remember very little learning about money in school.
Or taxation.
Exactly. The most I've ever learned was, since 2017, 2018, when I started learning about it myself.
True.
Which is true of so many different things. But, one day it'll get there. And if for no other fact that, one day our kids are going to be some of the teachers that are out there, and they're going to be living in this new world. So they could be the ones that can help usher it in as well. So, but yeah, right now, it does have to lean a lot on the home environment, the parents, that sort of thing.
Or actually thinking about it now, speaking with you on this subject, I guess with time, as Bitcoin adopts and it improves, and especially the UI and how it becomes more user-friendly, maybe there won't be a need to teach about it. Because, for example, in growing up, I'm a millennial. Like, I wasn't taught about the internet. What is the internet? We had like an IT class where we did stuff with on the internet, but it wasn't like a dedicated subject just for the internet. And I think similarly to Bitcoin, as you said, Scott, like our kids will grow up in this, Bitcoinized ecosystem bubble that we're raising them. So they actually won't really need to be classes specifically on what is Bitcoin, how does the, SHA-256 algorithm work, and so forth. Just like the same way, if you ask when a stranger on the street, how does the internet work? No, nobody can explain it, but it works, right? So
Yeah.
yeah, I guess you're right on that. And yeah, I totally agree with you. It's also here on the other side of the pond in Europe, like education is very slow to adapt. I remember even in my school books and then later university books, the books that we would get for the next semester, they were already published like 3, 4, 5 years ago, and so they're already like lacking. They're already outdated with what's being taught today. And I guess it's just the nature of the industry of education. Like things do tend to go very, very slow. I don't know why, but I guess that's the way it is. But on the other hand, we see other nations, like smaller nations, for example, one that comes straight to my mind with El Salvador, with the big, leap that they did 3 years ago, adopting Bitcoin as a legal tender, where everybody, laughed at them and said, they're insane, like it's not going to go anywhere. And today, those laughs have turned into like, curiosity of, wow, like this nation is actually changing for the better. And they have a really big program with
Mhm.
educating already kids about it. And I see, videos on social media, how they have like they're disassembling start9 nodes, and they have like very hands-on stuff. It's not just like,
Yeah.
theory stuff, which is very inspiring to see of like a country where, going back to the first world and third world concepts, which to me don't make any sense anymore. Today, like the world is so mashed that you can't really dissect it. This is first world, this is third world. They're like light years ahead of, let's say, the West and the civilized world, right? When it comes to educate about Bitcoin.
Yeah, you definitely have those pockets out there, whether it's El Salvador. I don't know, there's Dusan and MDH, which is based in Roatan, Honduras.
Yeah, yeah.
You have small pockets in Africa, and around the world. There's these little hubs. Costa Rica has one as well, and so those little hubs will hopefully spawn off more and more, because we've seen them grow over the 12 months. So just think about
Sure.
what's going to happen over the next 12 years. And I do totally agree with you that from a high level, using Bitcoin for our kids in particular will be second nature. We started taking our daughter to conferences when she was 3, and started being at our booth with us. And besides being there with us and engaging with our products, what we did was we asked her if she wanted to make something. And so for the first year, this was at Bitcoin 2023 in Miami, she made bracelets, actually, like the one I have on here, any standard bracelet that a
Proof
little
of
girl.
work.
Exactly. And she had a little basket of them. She had a laminated sign on the table, with a QR code and her name and everything. And she was a saleswoman. She has no fear, and would ask anybody coming up to the table if they want to buy a bracelet. There was no price on them, so it was all
Nice.
donation based. As you know, many Bitcoiners can be very generous. So
Yeah.
you get anything from 50 cents to more than 50 cents, and so she did quite well. But going back to your point, she knows, when people scan that QR code with their phone, it's going to my wallet. In her mind, her wallet is on my phone because that's where she can see the transactions
Balance.
going in. She, whether it's Bitcoin or other things, they're always using the phones anyways. They're scanning things. They're going to watch a show, whatever. It's going to be second nature to them in many different ways. So to your point, yeah, I don't think they're going to have to learn how to use Bitcoin in the sense of sending and receiving, especially as that UI, like you said, gets even more and more easy. A lot of that will probably be custodial. I mean, some people might hate that, but that's probably the nature of it, especially there's only so many transactions that the base chain is going to be able to handle. So there's going to be other layers involved here. But at the end of the day, it's going to be as easy as scanning and receiving or tapping and receiving, no different than using Apple Pay or a credit card or you name it. So I completely agree on that side of things. That side will be second nature. And then for those kids that want to dive deeper, they want to learn about Bitcoin and money or the tech side of things. They want to be an engineer. They want to create an app. They want to do X, Y, Z. They want to mine. That's kind of that next level of learning. Like you said, I don't need to know how Riverside is connecting you and I across the world today. I just have to click the link that you sent me. It's going to open in the browser, and away we go.
Yeah, no, 100%. And going back to one point that you mentioned about like using custodial services, I'm not of that nature, where I'm a Bitcoin maxi where it's only self custody. At the end of the day, like especially for children, we don't expect them to set up a whole Lightning channel and everything and run their own node to accept, let's say, 10,000 Sats, right? It's only natural, or anyone getting into
Yeah.
Bitcoin. It's like your first step into this, let's say, the full decentralized finance arena, and then once your stack grows, of course, then it
Yeah.
does make sense to withdraw to cold storage and keep it, in a safe way. But at the end of the day, like even your wallet, like you still walk around with, $50 in it, $100. You don't keep it in a vault. You're not going to carry a safe around to unlock it to get a $50 note out of it. So, yeah, I'm not against that. And of course, it's the ease of use, right? If we want to see the masses come in, they need to have that simplicity, as you said, the Apple Pays and everything. It's so easy now. People just have it on their phone. They tap twice the button on the side of their phone, and there they go. They tap it, and it's paid. So it's all the ease of use.
Yeah.
But I guess going into the topic of them being raised, I had a few months ago an amazing guest, Ben DeWall.
Mhm.
I'm sure you've heard
Yep.
of Ben and his wonderful daughter
Yeah.
Samantha. How basically through one car ride journey, to those listeners who haven't listened to the Ben DeWall Bitcoin story, I definitely advise us to go back and listen to it. It's another very inspiring one. But the point I'm trying to make is Samantha said that she never adopted Bitcoin. She was born into it. And that's
Yeah.
what I loved. Like all our kids, there is no converting them or trying to tell them why Bitcoin is better. It's just Bitcoin is money.
Yeah.
And over time, it's a self-fulfilling prophecy. There won't be a need to convert them or to kind of, to get them to choose, especially in 10, 15 years time. Who knows what shape or form fiat will be in? Will it even be here? Will it be replaced by the CBDCs? Who knows? We just have to wait and see. But it's just going to be second nature, and this whole burden that some of us are going through now and have been going for the last 6, 7, 10 years of buying coins of exchanges, may that be Coinbase or rest in peace FTX or MTGOX. So whatever the exchange was, it's such a different nature where you're exchanging your hard-earned money for the hardest form of money, where the future kids, as in the case of your daughter, as you said, creating a bracelet, they'll be offering their services and goods for Bitcoin, which I think that's the best part, where I'm even advising people today who want to kind of have some interactions with Bitcoin. I really push them and urge them to set up a service. You can even have an Instagram, you don't even have to have a full-on website or whatnot. It's so easy nowadays. You can spin it up in one afternoon and sell your product or your service for Bitcoin. And as you mentioned, Scott, and I fully agree with you, Bitcoiners are super generous, and Bitcoiners are very supportive of each other. If you see a service that offers their goods or services for Bitcoin, as a Bitcoiner, you tend to, deviate to them. So actually, as Peter McCormack says with the cheat code,
Yep.
it's a fantastic time to spin up a business and offer your service for Sats. And even if you sell them at a slight discount to kind of have a competitive edge over other suppliers or producers, in the long run, if you're stacking those Sats, you're well better off than if you're accepting fiat money, and then especially cash, which cash, as fast as it comes in, it goes out because you just lose track of it. It
Yeah.
just goes out straight away. So yeah, what's kind of on the plan? So with Shamory going forward, is there anything you're currently working on, or it's high secret that you can't really
Yeah.
share?
So, like you mentioned at the very beginning, I think you mentioned we have a new book about Satoshi Nakamoto and his Bitcoin
Yeah.
invention. So that came out a couple months ago, which was awesome. And so this is actually our first book that we didn't write ourselves. And so
Okay.
Tomer Smolite, who those might know in the Bitcoin community, he's written many different stories. This was a kid's story he wrote actually a number of years back.
Mm.
And he just never had the time or bandwidth to be able to publish it himself. And so about a year ago, it was actually after Pacific Bitcoin last year, he came to us and said, "Hey, I've had this story. I had known about this story because I remember him talking about it on podcast going back. I think it was like 2020, 2021. So it's years. Um, I've had the story. I just don't have the ability or time to be able to publish it. I want to do it with you guys. And so we said, yeah, let's do it. Our only stipulation was we want to be able to, wrap it into our brand with the monsters when it gets illustrated, and he was all for
Mhm.
it. And so, that was a process over the past year to bring this book to life. So that's focus number one, is being able to help that get out there. There's always um, it's a lot of work, no matter what the product is, but especially books and all that stuff, going through illustrations and manufacturing and shipping and getting the website ready. So there's always kind of a lull after getting something new out there. So I don't honestly know what's next. Lots of different ideas. It's always the case of too many ideas, not enough time, and not enough resource to make them come to life. But that's cool. We do have. We love partnering, with other Bitcoin companies. So in a couple of days, from now when we're recording, actually, I think it's tomorrow. For those that are familiar with the Tuttle twins,
Oh yeah,
so they have books and games, books and a television cartoon show, very focused on kind of the homeschool niche of teaching kids. And about a year or so ago, they put out an episode about Bitcoin, which was cool. And obviously, the Bitcoin community loved that. And so, on the 17th of October, they'll be releasing a second episode focused on Bitcoin. And if you look closely, you should see a few of our characters in that show, which is cool.
nice.
Going back to when we created all these things, I said, talking to Mallory, one of the goals is to have them be, have a cartoon with them in it, and so this is our version of making that come to life, which is cool to see, even if it's just
Amazing.
a small cameo in the background. Who knows? It's still something that happened. So working with other companies in the Bitcoin space is something awesome to do. And we've done a bunch in the past. We have a pin that we did with BTC pins, like we mentioned, our Waterwell project. We'll have a card and the next version of the Bitcoin trading cards packs that come out. So we'll have Aladdin in the team, and so it's a small community. Always open to ideas, no matter how crazy they may sound. Sometimes those are the best ones. So if somebody's out there and you're listening, and you have an idea for utilizing what we're doing or our characters, reach out. We're all ears to be able to hear what's up.
Amazing. Yeah, guys, don't be shy. Like the ideas that come to mind, sometimes you might think it's impossible, but if the right minds set themselves on it, great things can happen. And it's just fascinating, Scott, like what you've managed to achieve in such a short time span, in just a matter of, less than half a decade. You went from a gaming card to your first book, to then releasing numerous books, to the biggest one, to now being included in a cartoon, the plush toy, building wells, and who knows what happens in the next 5 years. It doesn't it feel like in your case, like things are just speeding up. Like the beginning, it's always the hardest to get off the start line. Now, once you've kind of are building up this brand, it's more of like, where do we want to take this, instead of kind of how do we survive here.
Yeah, totally. No, definitely the hardest one was definitely the first one. Neither Mallory or myself had ever created a physical product. We had never gone through an illustration process, a full on illustration creation process. In the case of the game, we had never created a card game. There was many very awful versions of it.
I
To
was
be
gonna say, let alone a game. Like I don't even know where to start off to create a new game, especially on a subject
Yeah,
like Bitcoin. So
yeah.
you took a big challenge, guys.
And there, back then we tested it with some of our friends and family, but we didn't know any other Bitcoiners to be able to actually test the gameplay. To be completely honest, when we started selling it, that was the first time we got any feedback from the actual Bitcoin community, and luckily none of them, especially those in the mining space, came back and said anything that we got wrong. It was actually the opposite.
Nice.
We know of mining companies that are out there that use our game in onboarding new employees to be able to teach them about mining. One of the biggest compliments we've ever gotten very early on, it must have been 2020, 2021, because it was after the world got back to somewhat normalcy and things were happening again. And we were at a small event up in Orange County. It was a little Bitcoin pop-up thing. And I think I was showing somebody how the game was played. And Mallory was talking to somebody that we didn't know who it was. And, he's watching it. And she said, oh, yeah, he's like, is this teaching about Bitcoin mining? And she was like, yeah. It's like, really? And he walked a little bit more, and he said to her, this is the most simplistic and elegant way I've ever seen mining explained. And he bought a few copies or whatever, and I met him, and it turned out it was, I'll leave it nameless, but one of the CEOs of one of the public mining companies.
Wow.
So if, that was our test bed and it worked. So that's kind of how it started. But yeah, getting that first one off was definitely the hardest. Then you learn the process, how long does it take to get things manufactured? How long does it take to get them shipped to you? We had one of our horrible episodes was, one of our shipments got stuck in customs. It was stuck there for like 6 months.
Oh,
Um,
wow.
and, there was nothing you could do. It was just stuck. It was stuck in a customs place that was like an hour and a half from our house. And I wanted to be like, can I just drive there? But you can't. There's nothing you can do. So you're just sitting and waiting and waiting and waiting. So yeah, we've learned a lot of different things along the way, and many more. I'm sure it never stops.
Yeah, I mean that's an amazing anecdote or story. Do you have any other ones that are kind of close to your heart with the experience that you had with Shamory that come to mind?
um, I mean, a lot of our stories that we like, it's all been fun. Creating something at the beginning. Just my wife and I. She was always very supportive of me learning about Bitcoin early on, and starting to invest. And but she'll freely admit this. It wasn't until we started creating Shamory and then her being able to go to events and see kind of the
Mm.
reception that really kind of turned the page for, oh yeah, Scott likes Bitcoin, whatever, to understanding it more, enjoying, when we go every year to the big conference, it's some of the funnest few days of the year for us because, at this point we know so many people. It's like a reunion, and it's just fun being
Reunion, yeah.
there. But a lot of our stories really started also when we started taking our daughter um, to the conferences. Like I said, she was 3. And so the first couple of years we left her back with grandparents and aunts and uncles. We're big travelers in our family, so we're always going places. So traveling is something she was started at a very young age, as is our baby now. And so I think it was only like a month or 2 before the conference, and I think it was probably me who had the idea. I'm like, should we just take her this year? And we were like, okay. I mean, we're like, what's the worst that happens? She cries the whole time. I mean, it'll end eventually. But it turned out the complete opposite. It was being able to bring her along. She's been there since she was a baby. We have a picture of us where when the first phone alert came through with the first sale on the website, we have a selfie of us, holding it up, and she must have been, let's see, I don't know, 9 months old, something
Oh,
like that.
wow.
So she'd been there from the beginning. She knows all the characters and everything, but having her be physically at an event like that and be part of it is extremely special for both of us. Challenging with one this past year, bringing both. So we had what Zoe was 6 months in July, 6-7 months when we took her to Nashville. So we had both of them
Wow.
on our booth this year. A whole level of another challenge, obviously, but that's kind of our motto. It's like, what's the worst that can happen? Okay, let's do it. But being able to have them along for the ride and meet people, at this point, Charlotte, our oldest one, is probably has more friends than us because people, will specifically come over and buy another bracelet, or she keeps upping her game. So first it was
Nice.
bracelets, and then it was bracelets and necklaces, and then at this last one it was bracelets, necklaces, and keychains. So it's nice because she says, Daddy, I see like you guys have new things all the time. Like I need new things too. Well, I mean,
Nice.
that's her learning a business. That's her learning the sales process. And so those little things are probably what's most special to us, outside of, everything else that's come along with Shamory.
No, it's incredible. And I mean, I have an experience of getting like first-hand business experience at the age of 5. Not many people have that, and how that's going to pay off in the future. It's a whole, it's essentially, once again, it's priceless. And if it wouldn't be, once again, for Bitcoin, of course you can go out and make, like, the back in the day, a lemonade stand or a cookie stand. but that's not just the same. People won't be gravitating towards it, especially at places like Bitcoin conferences, where it's like, yeah, to me as well, it's my favorite time of the year when I go to Bitcoin conferences, because to me it feels like time just pauses. You're like in this cloud nine, and you intermingle, you see old friends, you meet new people, you learn a lot of bunch of new products that are coming out, new ideas spawning. So it's a truly magical place, and if you can bring along your kids, I'm yet to take my kids to a Bitcoin conference, but I told them next year, BTC Prague, I will be taking them, because this year at BTC Prague they had a whole kids section, and it was Ben's the Wall daughter, Daniel Prince's daughters were there. They had like this whole little, and plus it was a girls crew, plus I've got the girls, so it's going to be like an ideal fit. So mini Gigi will be going there as well. And I just wanted to firsthand experience, because they see daddy doing his Bitcoin thing, and pictures and everything, and they have their huddle plush toys, but going there to meet people, and I'll prompt them up to create something and set them up with a QR code so they can actually sell it as well and get their first sats, essentially not from daddy but from someone else. Like, I want to get them that firsthand experience, which does huge things for their self-esteem and just the way they have an outlook at the world. So it's amazing stories that you're bringing over. I want to bring up.
It's also great that so many of the conferences have made a shift over the past year to be kid and family friendly. We started seeing it last year, Bitcoin 2023, when we took our daughter. There was a decent amount of kids just walking around, but there wasn't anything set up. But then I really want to tip my hat to Andre and the Free Madeira team for when they put on Bitcoin Atlantis, and
I heard that was the best one for kids and families.
Yeah, so of course, so Andre had asked us to lead up the kids side of things, and unfortunately we helped out a bunch, but we had to hand over reins to our friend Frankie because the conference was in March and we had given birth in January. So making a cross country international trip to do all that with a month and a half year old wasn't going to be in our cards, unfortunately. Hopefully for 2028 we'll be able to make it to Madeira. But yeah, Andre and that team being able to be forward thinking and create that kid zone has really jump started in my mind all these other conferences. So I know Martin in Prague had stuff. This past year in Nashville, we were able to help out. There was a kids, it was called Satoshi's Kids Camp. Nice. And so ourselves, the Bitcoin STEM team, Bitcoin Lightning Piggies, the Tuttle Twins, some others were involved in helping to create that. I believe there's about 150 or 200 kids that signed up to be part of it. And I know that they're planning on doing the same thing for Vegas next year. And so I think the mixture of having kids and family friendly aspects to these conferences, if you're creating a conference and you're not thinking about that, then you're probably missing out on both
for sure
the good it can do and probably some attendance as well, because like you said, you're gonna, if you have two different conferences to choose from and you want to take your entire family, you're going to pick the one that has something for the kids to be entertained and enjoy, and not just the one that is going to be for the grown-ups. So yeah, it's really cool to see.
Yeah, and just the overall experience, like, to me, like, being at a Bitcoin conference is amazing, but then you're like, the afternoon comes around and you're like, your energies are low, and then you're thinking about your kids, and then you call your kids and they're on the phone and they're like, Daddy, when are you coming home? And it's like, oh, I'm coming home soon. And it's like that bittersweet feeling. You're like, oh, I'm loving my time here, but I want to be with my kids as well. But then if you can bring together the two and have your kids and your wife together at such events, and I think it's a great way to also, like in your case with your wife, to get the wife to realize, like, our husbands are not actually, these tinfoil cuckoo guys, looking at the prices go up. Like, there's much more to it, and the people are actually super friendly. Like, it's I don't know any other community today that is as open-hearted and like welcoming as Bitcoiners are. Because to me, it feels like everybody's here to help out each other. There's no, like, to me, the big difference is there's no this jealousy and envy. Like, what do I have that guy doesn't have? Like, and maybe a few years ago there, especially 2017, that's when my journey started as well. I remember very clearly it was Bitcoin was all Lambos. It was the whole term, like, when Lambo, like all this glamour and stuff. And today it's like, forget the Lambo. It's about how do I, live a self-sustainable life somewhere in the country with my family, have loads of kids, and grow my own crops. So like it's a whole different ideology.
Yeah.
And it's a much healthier one, which, you know, if we want to see the success in Bitcoin that we're hoping for, we need to have a more natural take on it, and kind of go back to nature, if that makes sense. Kind of Bitcoin is already, even prior to Bitcoin, we're so like kind of living a cyborg life, because everything is online. Even this recording right now, everything is happening, business, everything is happening online. But then with Bitcoin, even though it's online, it's kind of making you rethink, you know, your time, and spending time on things that really matter, which essentially is family and, you know, well-being, nutrition, and so forth. So it's nice. It's kind of doing a whole pivot in changing your life outlook, which
Yeah.
I think is definitely needed where we
Yeah.
are today in the world.
Yep, for sure.
So I want to bring up another topic. Maybe this is not a Bitcoin specific related, but since I have a 4-year-old, which soon will be going into schooling as well, and I've been very avid on the homeschooling concept. Even in Prague, I spent some time with Daniel Prince, and actually we are going to be having him on the show in a couple of weeks, which I want to go into the topic of homeschooling as well with him, since I also read his book, and what he's done is an incredible example. But I want to hear from you, like firsthand, how has homeschooling been for you, and like what are some challenges and what are some advantages that you would share with me and the listeners, compared to, you know, other people that are in a position of not knowing to decide, shall I send them down the traditional educational route, or shall
Yeah.
I take the leap of faith and do some homeschooling?
Yeah, no, for sure. And you'll enjoy the chat with Daniel. He's a good friend of ours. Funny enough, that was the very first podcast we ever went on,
Oh,
uh,
really?
back in 2020. So we've become good friends since then. And I'm sure in a small way, seeing the success he's had with the four of them has played a role into it. But even before that, it's funny, you know, earlier I mentioned so many of both myself and my wife have family members who are in the traditional education space. So one would think that because of that, we'd be more prone to just, okay, you know, that's what happens.
Go with the usual.
Yeah, exactly. Um, but I think it's actually the opposite, just because both for myself working in the space in the past, and my wife had similar experiences, just seeing what truly goes on in the system, probably pushed us away and wanting to explore more of the options that are out there. And just the fact that, you know, very similar to what I was saying about kind of the travel side of things, where, you know, we started traveling with both of our kids from a very young age, whereas some other people might, you know, be too nervous or too much work or whatever. But our motto, you know, let's just do it. And so we've had a similar motto where it comes to learning, where most people underestimate how fast and how soon a child could start learning. You know, they're learning like a sponge from moment one, in various ways. And when it comes to actually teaching them things, from more traditional education space sense, you can start extremely young. And that's what we had done with our younger daughter. Not in the sense that, you know, when she's a year old, we're sitting her down at a desk and making her, you know, do homework of some sort, but just teaching her letters, teaching her numbers, teaching her sounds, those sorts of recognitions, then kind of just set them up to succeed. And so from a young age, we kind of started doing that. I don't really honestly know the first time we said we wanted to homeschool to each other. I think it
Just
just kind of,
happen naturally.
yeah, I think it just kind of was something we both understood and happened. To be completely honest, I think the whole period of, you know, 2020, 2021 with the lockdowns and everything probably made it
You had
happen.
no choice.
It happened naturally. I mean, she was only, you know, a year or two then, so she wasn't going to school then. But just the fact that um, we were all just arrived, forced, for lack of a better word, to be around each other, and we knew that we could do it. Um, why not? We both had the flexibility from a working standpoint to be able to make stuff happen. And so, you know, fast forward now, she's 5. Our oldest is 5, so technically she'd be going into kindergarten here in the States in a traditional path. Um, but she's been doing work at a much higher level for a few years now. So there's a few different drawbacks from our side of things, and every situation's unique. Where one, if we were to, you know, a couple months ago in September said, okay, Charlotte, you know, off to school you go, and you're going to go sit in this classroom for 6, 7, 8 hours. Quite honestly, she'd probably be bored, because there's 20 or 30 kids in there, they have to teach
Mm.
to the actual level that kindergarten is, whereas she's already mastered many of those things. So then you worry about the boredom setting in, and so there's that side. There's also just the fact that it doesn't take 6 to 8 hours a day to learn things. When people think about homeschool, I think a lot of times they might think about, oh, there you are at your house and you have to, sit them down at a table for hours on end. And, just like a classroom, we're going to do English for an hour and then we're going to do science for an hour. And then it's not that at all. And it doesn't have to be, especially at, when they're 5. You can, teaching them for 30 minutes to an hour a day, they can learn so much, especially because they're not distracted by other kids and everything else going on. So those little things, especially if you've started doing it when they're 1, 2, 3 years old, it just flies by. And so being able to kind of take those small victories, understand that you don't need that many hours a day, that really one of the primary purposes of the traditional system is a daycare. It's to allow parents to have freedom to be able to, sometimes it's good to go to work, sometimes to do other things. And obviously everybody's work situation is different. Not everybody can homeschool that. And we understand that. But for us, being able to have the ability to be flexible and do that was something that we kind of created our life around. And for some other selfish reasons, like, going back to it, we like traveling. We don't want a school calendar to dictate when we can
When
go
you can go.
somewhere. One, because it's fun, and two, because when you take your kids places, they're learning. They're going to learn more going on a trip. If it's to a conference, there's more she's learning sitting at a table selling things for 2 or 3 days than she is sitting in a classroom. So those experiences are something that you can't get back as well.
Amazing. So just out of curiosity, what does like a typical day look for in your case for your 5-year-old? Like, do you have breakfast and then you sit down for an hour, or you kind of just wait for her to be in the right mood and write? How does that work?
So a little bit of everything, and it's actually slightly changed over the past few months. And so up until this year, she had never gone to daycare or preschool or anything like that. She was always home with us, or going to a grandparent's house or something, along those lines. But now that she is of age to be in kindergarten, technically, there's more. There were some different options and routes that we could take on the homeschool side of things, since in the States, you do still have to school your kids. You have to prove to them that something is happening. And so we looked through different options, and one that we started testing out this year here in San Diego, it's called the Homeschool Academy. So actually for the past couple of months, every Tuesday and Thursday, she goes on site to a call it a school. And there's about 15 kids in her class, for lack of better words. And
virtual class.
Yeah, kind of. Well, it's real, so the kids are there, so it's not virtual, but it's not they're kindergarten through second graders that are all together. And it's really about kind of self-led learning, socialization, group projects, just playing some of it, just playtime. So there's no curriculum. That's part of it. And so for 2 days a week, for the past couple of months, she's gotten to go do that. It's also nice because one of us is able to be there with her. So it's not like dropping your kid off and sending them and then coming and pick them up. You can do that. But she likes having us there, and we don't mind being there and being able to pop in and out and see what's going on. So that's been a slightly different learning curve, where there's those two things happening 2 days a week. And now we have to kind of work in, when does the actual curriculum come into play, since that still falls back on the parents. So in a typical day, we really don't separate out the weekdays from the weekends, just because there's not much of a difference in our.
Doesn't matter if it's a Sunday or a Wednesday; it's the same routine.
So, for example, this morning, after we got up, both my wife and I take turns exercising. Everybody's had breakfast. This morning, my wife was taking both of them off to do something, and so before they left, I sat down with Charlotte for it was probably maybe 30 minutes. There wasn't a lot of time, and we did an English exercise together at the table before she left. they're off for a few hours, and then probably this afternoon there'll probably be some sort of math thing that pops up, or sign. There'll probably be something else squeezed in this afternoon on the learning. So it's not so structured in the sense that every day at 10 o'clock we're doing this. It really depends on what's happening that day.
Sure.
Especially with having the baby around, that throws things off here and there, as you imagine.
Yeah.
And so, just it's finding a rhythm, finding different versions of curriculum that you like. I'll give all the credit to my wife for being the leader on that side of things.
Nice.
Being able to organize and get everything that we need to be able to teach properly, and it's something she very much enjoys as well. So just like in every marriage, you kind of want to divvy up and separate different duties, and she takes on a lot of that. But when it comes to actual teaching and schooling, we both try to sit down and go through it, and we'll do the same with the younger one as well.
Amazing. Well, it's very inspiring. You're giving me a lot of ideas, Scott, because I'm currently in this. Our daughter, both of them actually, the 4 and the 2-year-old, are going through nursery because they were brought up in this COVID period, just like in yours, where there was no socializing. So like I felt like it was a great way, and they're not really learning much. There's some stuff that they're learning, but yet definitely schooling, as in like primary school or junior school, whichever system you go down. That's something I really don't want to push them down, where it's more of like a memory factory than actual learning, where you go and experience things for yourself. So I'm kind of getting I'm preparing my toolings and stuff, and it's always nice to hear from other people that are actually doing it firsthand, instead of reading something on Reddit or on blogs, where it kind of, you don't know, is it real, is it not? But thanks a lot, Scott, for sharing that with me and the listeners. And I'm sure there's other listeners. I know there's other listeners who have young kids, so I'm sure they're around with a notepad taking some notes here and there. But I guess to wrap up this episode, usually I close it on with a question to the guest. What is one piece of advice you would give to someone starting their Bitcoin journey? But in your case, since we focus so much on parenting and education, I'll customize a little bit, and I'll ask you, Scott, what would be your advice given to other parents and essentially educators who want to introduce Bitcoin to their children?
Yeah, I think the first thing I would say was kind of similar to what we were just talking about: is don't be afraid to do it, and don't be afraid to start too young. And then secondarily to that, I would say one of the great things that's happened over the past number of years is, besides the things that hopefully we're doing at Shamory, but so many other people in the space, being able to create products and curriculum that can help kids learn. There's lots of stuff that's out there, and it's only going to get better. It's only going to get easier to find. Use it. Reach out to the people if you have questions. Reach out to us. Reach out to whoever's creating it. That I can probably guarantee you, if you find a project out there that you have a question about in the Bitcoin space, and the Bitcoin space for kids education, if you reach out to the person who created it, they're probably going to respond and be happy you reached out, and be willing to help however you can. And so, it would just be, do it. If you are a teacher that's in the traditional space, and you are a Bitcoiner and you want to start bringing it in, don't be afraid to find a way to do it. Talk to your principal or your whoever it is at your school. One of the nice things that we've done with our books and our game is they are STEM authenticated. And so that could help you potentially get that wrapped into your curriculum there, where you can say, hey, Principal XYZ, I want to start playing this game with my, class of third graders. It maps back to the STEM standards. Is this okay? So just kind of find that avenue to be able to make it happen, and see where it all goes. So don't be afraid, and don't be afraid of starting too early is probably step one.
Amazing. Well, there you guys have it. Don't be scared. Your kids are never too early to start learning about Bitcoin, or anything else for that matter. Don't underestimate these pure, essentially sponges which are unpolluted, unpropagandized. They're ready to learn in every second. So take advantage of their fresh minds. And I guess the last question I have, Scott, is where can we send our listeners to follow you and Shamory and get access to all of your incredible products?
Yeah. So the website's shamory.com, SHAMORY. And then across all socials, it's at Play Shamory. We're most active on Twitter, X, whatever you want to call it. We do have handles in
Twitter.
other spots, but exactly. But X is definitely where you'll find us most active. So DMs are open for myself or the Shamory handle. I'm Scott M. Sibley on Twitter, or scott@shamory.com if you want to send an email. If you send something over, it'll be seen by us and responded to. And yeah, happy to look forward to sending books, games, plushies, baby teethers, whatever it may be, your way.
Amazing. Well, there you guys have it. Don't be shy. If you have some ideas or have questions or anything else related to Shamory, feel free to reach out to them. I'm sure they'll be more than glad to get back to you and help you out. Scott, thanks a lot for taking the time to jump on the call today. It's been an absolute pleasure meeting you, and thank you for sharing your story with us. It's very inspiring. I hope other people, can take it away, at least some, if anything, parental experience and kind of tips on how to go forward, sharing the Satoshi's workings to their future generations. And yeah, wish you all the best of luck to you and your wife. I think you guys are doing an amazing job. I hope there's going to be more companies that could follow suit and share these incredible developments and opportunities with our young ones. And we look forward to having you back in the future, because our Bitcoin stories, Scott, are only getting started. It's only been 6 years. There's a lot more to happen, and I'm sure Shamory's got a long, bright orange way to go. So we'd love to have you back in the future to hear how things are going and hear some more anecdotes of what's happening with you.
No, thanks again for having me. It was a blast, and always happy to jump back on and chat. So look forward to it.
Perfect. Thanks a lot. Until next time.